Hello, my name is Jim Hanley and I'm with Mariah Freedom Ministry. What I'd like to do is share with you this little argument, and we've titled it Philosophical Apologetics. And what I want to do is share with you how to get a person to look at Christianity. There are so many things on the plate, so many options on the plate. That's what Satan does, is he's got so many choices out there that people aren't really sure what to look at. I pray with people all the time that have examined maybe 10 or 15 different religions, dabbled in one thing after another because they were looking for something, and they finally came to Christianity because it's most popular here in the United States, but they still didn't know why they should focus in on Christianity and not be a Buddhist or Hindu or some other religion. So what I usually do is I share with them these four concepts, principles, and usually with these under their belt they have a tool so that they can then make a decision about what religion they really want to examine. And it is most often Christianity. So it's called philosophical apologetics. And actually, when I go back in my own life, apologetics is really near and dear to my heart. Trained as an apologist, Simon Greenleaf School of Law and Apologetics. Now it's absorbed by Biola. At least some of the apologetics courses are. But at that particular point in time, this was one of my questions, because I was just beginning to walk in Christianity, and I wasn't even sure yet whether or not Christianity was the only religion I wanted to look at. Although I was wanting Christianity to be the right religion, I really wasn't assured of it. And so this particular tool really helped me, and I hope it helps you. The first proposition, and this is just a proposition, there is a God. If there is no God, Bertrand Russell has rightly stated in Why I'm Not a Christian that we should not have any hope in life after death. Let me read to you what he said. And quite frankly, when I read this, and it was in Why I'm Not a Christian, it caused me to want to study all the more, because it was so discouraging that it caused me to really drove me really to Christianity. That man is a product of causes which have no provision to the end they were achieving, that its origin, his growth, his hopes, his fears, his loves, his beliefs are but the outcome of an accidental collocation of atoms. No fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. That all labors of the ages, all devotion, all inspiration, all noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system. And the whole temple of man's achievements but inevitably be buried beneath the debris of a universe in ruin. All these things, if not quite beyond dispute, are so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built. As I mentioned, Bertrand Russell drove me to want to examine the alternative, because this did not settle right in my spirit. And if you're like me, you have eternity written in your heart, and it just doesn't fit well. This is a propositional statement, not accepted as truth, that there is a God. So I'm going to start there. Don't accept it as truth, but just, okay, there is a God. Now, why? Well, the alternative is exactly what Bertrand Russell stated. There's no hope. There is no provision for the future. There is no hereafter. There is no meaning to our life. We are just an accident of the assembly of various particles, various elements of this earth. And so that's the alternative. There's no purpose to your life, and God doesn't want you to do anything because there is no God. Okay, now that's the first proposition. There is a God. The second proposition is that he must reveal himself. If there is a God and he doesn't reveal himself, he still doesn't provide us with any information about what we're to do. I have no hope if God doesn't reveal himself to me. I have no understanding if I've even pleased him, or if I have instead made him angry at me, if he doesn't reveal himself. I have no assurance. If we don't know there's a future beyond the grave, we have no hope. Is there something that I need to do for approval? Maybe there's a purpose in my life. All of these questions are not able to be resolved unless God reveals himself. And within that revelation, the revelation must be consistent. In other words, it must hold together consistently without contradiction. Otherwise, I still don't know what's true and what's untrue. Again, a proposition, not a statement of truth, but a proposition. So, the first proposition is there is a God. Second proposition, he must reveal himself. Third proposition, he must make a truth declaration. Without truth, we have a revelation, but we still have no assurance. Jesus' apostles make truth statements many times, often prefacing comments with truly, truly. Most important, Jesus said, I am the truth. And so truth is an underlying consistency in the biblical revelation. But without that truth statement, we don't have assurance. One time I was talking with a Muslim, and he said that, I asked him if God could lie, and he says yes. What assurance do you have? I'm not sure. And then finally, he must prove it. And how does he prove it? In the scripture, we see that Jesus proves his credentials by fulfilled prophecy and by the resurrection. And what the resurrection proves is that not only was he greater than all before him, but that he hadn't sinned. Because up until that point, no one had been able to live beyond the grave because sin had kept them from eternal life. But sin couldn't hold Jesus down, it says in Hebrews. And so the resurrection. Now, let me talk a little bit about fulfilled prophecy, because this is important. As we look at the Bible, the statement that goes along with prophecy is that it's 100% accurate. That's hard for a lot of people to believe. It was hard for me to believe. But this is how I came to Christ, is through examining fulfilled prophecy. And I'm not talking about just the prophecy about Jesus Christ. I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of prophecies that we could examine. If we go into the book of Daniel, for example, in chapter 11, and I've written a commentary on the book of Daniel, and chapter 11, I go into great detail of how Daniel laid out probably 100 prophecies right in a row of things that would happen after him, all the way up to the coming of Christ and even beyond. And it even has the exact date when Jesus would come in riding on the foal of a donkey in chapter 9. Peter Stoner once examined the miracles of Christ, or not the miracles of Christ, but fulfilled prophecies of Christ, and he took 7 prophecies. Now, Jesus fulfilled 324 prophecies, according to some count. In fact, I had a list of them all, so he did. But he fulfilled those 7 prophecies, And Peter Stoner took each one of those prophecies and established some kind of conservative estimate of the probability of each one of those coming true in one man. He put them all together, and then he came up with a number. And when he got done, he had to make an analogy, something we could look at to compare it, because the number by itself just seems so hard to grasp. But the number that he came up with is that if you were to fill Texas, the whole state of Texas, and it's pretty big. I'm on the coast of California, and I drove from here to El Paso, Texas, through 3 states. 3 states, hit El Paso, and I was halfway to my destination in South Padre Island, which is only halfway across Texas. So anyway, if you were to fill the state of Texas to a depth of 2 feet with silver dollars, mark 1 with a black X, with a Sharpie pen, then throw it into the state of Texas, mix it all up, and then challenge somebody to walk in the state of Texas, and on the first pick, to pick that silver dollar up that was marked. That would be the same probability that Jesus is not the Christ, according to the calculation by Peter Stoner. Nobody's been able to disprove his mathematics. Now, you want me to really mess with your mind. Peter Stoner goes on, and he says that let's take 49 prophecies that have the equal probability of those 7, and let's make it something different. We got to get away from silver dollars, because that's just too hard to even imagine the calculation from that. And so he goes to electrons. He has a number of electrons that he says are in an inch, in a lineal inch. And he said, okay, the number that I come up with is the same as a ball of electrons. And taking one electron and marking it and throwing it into that ball, and he said, blindfolded, walking into that ball of electrons and picking out that black one on the first chance, is the same as a probability that Jesus is not the Christ. That's with 49 prophecies. Guess how big that ball of electrons would have to be to represent that probability? He said it was 3.5 times the size of the known universe as calculated by Isaac Asimov. That's the assurance that we have that Jesus is the Christ. Maybe you don't agree with one of those 49. Well, we just can throw in one of the other 300 or so prophecies into the mix. Or 2, or 3, or 280. And so the probability that Jesus is not the Christ is so infinitesimal that we can have assurance. Thank you. Now, as we look at these 4 propositions, you can see that they're designed to point us in a direction in which we can sort through a lot of different religions. So we might use these first propositions. This is the only way that we can have assurance, is if these 4 propositions are true. And so we examine some of the false religions. We look at Hinduism. Can we say that in Hinduism these 4 things are true? Is there a revelation? Is it consistent? Is it provable? We can look at even the cults, and we can do the same thing. We can look at Buddhism, and we can do the same thing. In other words, we can take this tool and line it up with any religion, and very quickly we find that most of the religions don't measure up to the standard that we need to find assurance, not only of our salvation, but a purpose and a direction for our life.